Privyet comrades, TFCom here, and I just wanted to have a reminder for everyone with Father's Day coming up and Mother's Day not in the very distant past. And that is that you are under no obligation to celebrate those holidays. If your parents are bad people, then they don't deserve a holiday, you know? And I know a lot of Christians will probably come out and be like, I'm supposed to forgive, why can't I forgive? And think about it that way, Jesus was the one who's supposed to forgive. You know, he's the pure person. Are you as good as Jesus? No. So, clearly, you aren't expected to forgive everyone, because only he could have done that. And now, I am speaking as a non-Christian, but I have practiced it for many, many years before recently coming to terms that I'm not. But that is no hatred for you guys at all, because I still know the basic rules and stuff. But now here's the thing. Should you feel guilty for not wanting to be in your parents' life, for not giving them a gift, to not caring about them, because, you know, respect thy mother and father? And that is definitely not the case. No, no, no. Because if your parents are bad people, they're not your parents. They're Steve and Amy, or whatever their names are. They are not your parents whatsoever. They've lost that title when they decided to not treat you as a parent would. My mother was one of the worst people in the world, and I hear she's better now, but I still want nothing to do with her. That doesn't make me a bad person. Even if she's, so if I've heard, stopped drinking and stopped doing drugs, and all that, and that she's much better and everything else, that doesn't mean she's a good person in my book. Because I will not forget the things she's done to me. And I'm not under no obligation to. Because that's another abuse tactic, where they be like, "There's all the horrible things we've done, now you need to forgive us for this, because now I want to try to be better." And no, you've suffered severe trauma. Don't expect to suddenly be able to forgive that. Remy, stop it. My cat's chewing on my leg. Remy! But, you're under no obligation for that. My mom has done some unforgivable things. I have epilepsy because she has banged my head against the wall so many times I've suffered severe head trauma. Stop it, Remy! You're ruining the serious moment. So epilepsy. She has beat me within an inch of my life multiple times. She has thrown me across the room. She has held me by my neck. She has raped me. She has told me that I am a waste of space, that I should die, that she should have had an abortion, that I shouldn't live to the next day. She has threatened me that I will not live to the next day. She has called the school and told them to hold me back a year, because I am not mentally competent, according to her. She has always been insanely controlling. I was not allowed to go out. I had to stay home all times. As I got older, I would find a way to sneak out, but I would always come home to be insanely beaten and usually raped to put me in my place. Sorry. I don't usually say all this stuff at once, so it's... okay. My mother has poisoned me multiple times with things I'm allergic to, because she's found it funny to watch me seize on the floor as she laughs. My mother has taken my medication away from me, because she finds it funny to watch me have problems in day-to-day life. Sorry. That one's one of the big hits. I ran away from home once. I was only able to last not even a night, because as I was out, the place I decided to stay low at, the park, apparently at night was a gang territory. I got stabbed in my shoulder, and they chased me out. I came home with what I thought was a broken leg. Apparently I just fell wrong or something like that, but so I was in intense pain, covered in blood, or at least slightly blood, you know. It wasn't even that deep, get stitches, but it was definitely a stab wound. And coated in mud, because it decided to storm that night, of course. And my mom just said, you better wash yourself off before you go inside, and no, you can't use the hose. So what was I supposed to do? I just stood out in the rain until I passed out on the sidewalk. Sorry. At birth, I was intended to be intersex, but my mother made them make me female. When they first injected me with the hormones, my body counteracted them by producing an excess of testosterone, leading, you know, any doctor to believe I was just a late start and that I was intended to be male. They told her this. She insisted they keep doing what it takes to make me female. When I first told her that I was male at 14, I was locked in my room. I wasn't allowed to go to school. I wasn't allowed to eat. I wasn't allowed to use the bathroom. I had to pee in the corner. It was horrible until I started wearing dresses again. When I told her again that I was male, how many years later was that? 7 years later, I told her again I was male. And by this point, I had moved out, but she still controlled a large amount of my finances and stuff because, you know, I was only 20. She controls your phone bill, your car insurance, your everything. Because that's how she is, you know. Plus, that's the case for many 20-year-olds. And I told her again, she said I was never allowed to come back home, that I wasn't allowed to see my siblings again, that she would tell my father that I never wished to see him again. At the time, I didn't have my dad's number, only she did. So I had no way to contact him to tell him the other, you know, what was really true. She told my sister, I've actually asked her about that, she told her that I thought she was worthless trash and that she never deserved to even be in my life, that I'm too good for her, things like that. And for those who know, my relationship with my sister is, she's the most important person in my life. She always has been. So that was a big hit. But I was refusing to back down. I was kind of calling her bluff, and unfortunately, it was not the one to call. When I came home one night and told her that my teacher had raped me, she told me I should be thankful that he found me attractive enough to do so. And told me I should actually go to school the next day and thank him for what he has done. And if he wished to go out with me or do it again, I should say yes. When I came home with a girlfriend in middle school, my mom said it was good because now my stepdad could have a good picture to watch. I didn't date another girl until around 3 years later. And I spent the night at her house all the time because I did not want my mom to know that I was with another girl and say some horrible things and make neither of us feel comfortable. Years later, I found another girl, and she was great to me, made me feel like I should have family at her house. And my mom would constantly threaten to kill both of us. Never said it to her, of course, and I didn't want to spread that fact because I knew she wouldn't, no matter what she said. I was lucky to eat once or twice a week. I was not allowed to eat at home. The only time I could eat was when friends snuck me food at school, or when I stole it. I didn't have a lot of options, and I had to do what I had to do. If I had ever been arrested, I know she wouldn't have paid my bail. She would not. I would have been in juvie or wherever else, and when I got out, I probably would have been killed. Or pretty close to it. My mother has damaged me in ways mentally that I don't think I'd ever be a good enough parent because I'm going to end up like her. That I am constantly afraid that someone's going to jump out and attack me, even though I live alone. That I am shaking as saying all this stuff, even though it's been years. That I am seeking counseling just to get through day-to-day life, and it's usually not working. She has made me internalize all these horrible things about myself, to the point that I have attempted suicide 8 times. The earliest attempt being 6th grade. It's 11 years old. CPS has been called multiple times, and every time she'll find a way to talk it out of it, you know. I'm in the hospital for being poisoned. Oh, you know, she forgot her allergies again. I have epilepsy. She must have been born with it. My broken arms and broken leg. I never broke my legs, but broken arms for sure. Oh, she fell. And I started getting bruises on my neck from choking. She's a kinky little one. She'd always find an excuse for anything, and as I got older, the more believable it got, you know? Because when you're a kid, bruises on your neck and things like that are suspicious, but, you know, cuts all over your arms and legs, you just fell. Kids do that all the time. When you're an adult, or at least teenager, you know, they stop thinking of those things. They're like, okay, so you have all these red marks all over your arm, things like that. Either you disobeyed your parents and they had to discipline you, or you're into some stuff, or you're in sports, or like there's plenty of ways to play it off, you know? And she always did. She always found a way to play it off. CPS only actually questioned me once. Out of all those hundreds of times it was probably called, only once I was questioned. And they kept questioning my dad. And I tried to say, well, my mom does this. They were like, no, we're here about your dad. The reports say your dad hurt you. No. At the time, I hadn't seen my dad in years. You know, he didn't do anything. And I kept trying to tell him, no, my dad doesn't do anything. My stepdad's not that great, but he's doable. My mom is the issue. And they're like, no, we're here to talk about your dad. They wouldn't listen to anything. So, why am I telling you guys all this? Partly to get off my chest. I do agree to that. However, most of it is, there is no way I'll ever forgive my mother for the things she has done. There's no way I could ever even hope to forgive my mother for these things. And some people have it much worse than I did. Some people are still living in that. So you are definitely under no obligation to forgive your parents for those type of things. No way whatsoever, you know? There's no rules that say you have to deal with that. Sorry. But with Mother's and Father's Day coming up, or Mother's Day past, you know, you don't have to celebrate it. If you live at home and you still live with them, it may sound counteractive, but I do suggest you celebrate it. Because personal experience, I know that giving them a gift, it may not save you from being beat, but it may make the beatings less severe. But when you're on your own, you owe them nothing. You don't have to forgive them for the things they've done. You don't. My mother threw a big fit that I didn't wish her happy Mother's Day. And like a coward, I came in and said, I'm sorry, I was going to say something when I got off of work. But I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to respond whatsoever. I could have ignored her. She probably would have called and texted more and more and more until, you know, something. But I didn't have to do any of that. Now, I probably would have, simply because A, I'm afraid to death of her, and B, you know, my car and everything's still in her name, because that's how she is. So I probably would have still done something. But if you're completely on your own, they don't control you whatsoever. You don't have to have a good relationship with your parents. Well, they've cleaned up now. They've gone to AA. They've, you know, found Jesus, whatever else. Okay, that's good for them. You don't have to forgive them just because now they're a better person and back then they were bad. It doesn't negate that they were bad in the past. You know, they may be the purest saint ever now. You don't have to forgive them. You don't have to be nice to them. They don't deserve that. There is no way to atone for some of the things that my mom has done. There's no way. And someone could... What traumatizes you doesn't matter how severe it is even. Your mother could have just told you that she should have had an abortion. One time. And that could have traumatized you for life. You know? It could have. And I know some people that it has. So, they're under no obligation to forgive their family for that. You know, if they were drunk when they said it, it doesn't matter. You don't get to choose who you traumatize. When someone tells you that they have experienced severe trauma due to you, you don't get to tell them that they didn't. When someone has told you that you have hurt them emotionally, you don't get to tell them that you didn't. When someone tells you they don't feel safe in your house, you can't tell them that they don't, that they do feel safe. You don't get to choose any of this stuff. I mean, if someone says you physically hurt them and you've never touched them, okay. But you don't get to choose whether or not what you have done has traumatized someone. You don't. And you don't control any of that, you know? It may seem like nothing to you. It may have been the least bad thing you've done. Even to them. You may have done horrible things to them, and this one thing isn't even that bad. But that's what stuck with them. You don't get to tell them that it's worse somewhere else. You don't get to tell them, oh, well, this kid over here got raped daily, so your problems aren't that bad. You can't say that. My mom would always do that. There's starving children in Africa thing. So you should be more accepting of that. You know, when I was younger, I would complain more about not getting to eat. As older, you know, I realized, don't complain, you get beat. But, you know, I'd be like, I didn't get to eat today, Mom. And she'd be like, okay, there's so many people who don't get to eat every single day. So you should be thankful that you get to eat at all. You know, you got to eat yesterday. So, you know, suck it up. Not everyone gets to eat every day. And so growing up, I thought maybe I was just insanely poor. But when my mom got with my most recent stepdad, Chris, they're now divorced. But when she got with him, he would have steaks, and they have like seafood night, and they'd have like all these chickens, and they'd have like really good stuff. And if I was lucky, I got like 2 bites. I wasn't allowed to eat that stuff. I wasn't even allowed to eat the veggies that came on the side. So then I realized we weren't poor. Even if that's all she could have afforded was those fancy steaks, then that could have fed us for at least a few days if she had gotten something cheaper. We weren't poor. I just wasn't allowed to eat with them because I wasn't good enough for them. Because I'd never been good enough for them. And that hits hard. Because how can you love yourself if the person who's supposed to love you unconditionally hates you, thinks you're worthless, thinks you're nothing? How can you think that you're a good person if you're constantly told that you're trash, that you'll never amount to anything, that your kids, if you ever have them, will hate your guts, that she'll try to take any kids that you ever have from you, and she'll win? Even if you know the legal system and know the odds are in your favor, it still traumatizes you to the point that you don't want to have kids. You don't want to end up like her. You don't want to do any of the things they've done. And I know some stories are worse than mine, some are much better, but it's not a competition. Whatever traumatized you, and you are under no obligation to forgive them whatsoever. You're just not. There's no one there telling you, you must do this. Society may tell you that, she's your mom, you should love her, or she's your dad, or he's your dad, or whatever else, or they're a good person now, you're kind of a dick for not forgiving them. Push through that. I know society will usually tell you that you're wrong, but what they've done is wrong. In cases where you were taken from your parents due to abuse, people will even tell you it wasn't that bad. But in cases where you weren't taken from your parents, everything's in your head. It couldn't have been that bad. If it was bad, they would have taken you away. You're obviously lying. If they'd done any of that stuff, you would have been taken away. Well, believe it or not, I'm proof that it's not always the case. And people have asked, if it was that bad, why didn't you live with your dad? I was terrified of my mom. If I was going to cross her to even visit my dad, better yet move in with him, I'd have to sneak out in the night or something, because there was no way she could have known I was going to do that, and it would have ended well. And my dad, he lived 5 hours away. How was I going to get there? I wasn't allowed to have my license. I wasn't allowed outside most days. There was no way I could have gone and lived with my dad. I couldn't have called him to come pick me up, because he would have talked to my mom. There was no way I could have just gone and lived with my dad, you know what I mean? And he would tell us, when he visited, you can always come live with me, But he didn't know what was really going on. He didn't know the full extent. He didn't even know she was mean. He was just being like a whole, Daddy loves you kind of thing. He didn't know what was going on. And even when I tried telling him what was going on, he never believed it. Even as an adult, he was like, your mom never would have done that. If she would have done that, the hospital would have called me or something. If CPS was involved, I would have been called too. And that's not the case. You don't live at the house. I haven't lived with my dad since I was 5. So me having problems at 11, having problems at 17, there's no way he would have been called for that. He wouldn't, and he didn't. But people will try to tell you that your feelings are invalid, that your memories are wrong, that these things have never happened, that if they did happen, they weren't that bad. She didn't beat you within an inch of your life, she just spanked you. They'll try to tell you these things. And they'll try to tell you that everything is wrong. You know, you're wrong. That you deserved it. That you should be thankful someone finds you attractive. That if you didn't want problems, just keep your head down. I saw a blog recently about advice for people who are being abused. How to stay on your hands and knees because it makes less noise. Stay near furniture because the house is settled more there. How to make sure you learn how to navigate your house blind because there will be many occasions wherein you'll be beat within an inch of your life or you'll be beat to the point you can't see. Where to hide food. How to avoid eating multiple days in a row to not cause suspicion. Where to hide trash. How to count things. If your family eats 3 Reese's a day, then maybe one extra missing wouldn't be a huge issue. Or maybe on these one days they eat less than the other days, so plan to take the food that day. Never steal alcohol. Even watered down, they can tell. Watered down juices and sodas. Because they can't tell as well with those. All kinds of advice. The post was amazing. If I could find it again, I'd gladly share it with you guys, but I don't remember where I found it. You could probably Google it. But it was all about advice for abuse victims and what to do. You know, how to hide the fact that you're eating. If they get suspicious, to back up. Not eat. To not eat crunchy foods. Because even though granola bars and things like that are easy to sneak around and easier to hide, you can't hide the fact that you're eating them. Even if it means soaking them in water to the point that they taste like garbage. It's a good idea. How to eat outside your window if your window opens, so that your crumbs would fall out there. Advice that I would have loved to have as a kid, and the fact that I would have needed it is a sad fact. My point being, you're under no obligation to your parents. You're under no obligation to your grandparents if they were bad people as well. You're under no obligation to celebrate this holiday whatsoever. If your parents are good, that's great. I'm not talking about you. You know, it's great. If your parents are bad and you still feel the need to celebrate this holiday, that's not wrong. If you don't forgive your parents, but you're trying to, and you want to be in their life, and you want to celebrate this for them, that's great. That's your own personal thing. You're not bad for forgiving them. And if you're unable to, then that's not bad either. The thing is, if you want to forgive them, that's great. If you're able to get on completely with your life, no matter what they've done, if you are able to act normal around them, just feel safe around them, and everything's fine now, that's great. That's really great. Because I would love to be able to feel safe around my mom. That's great that you're able to have a good life with them and a good relationship with them. And that's all great. That's great. But if you're not able to, don't force yourself to. Maybe 20 years down the road, you can forgive them and everything will be great. But you're under no obligation to do that now. You're under no obligation to do that ever. Maybe later you can, maybe later you can't. There's no rules that say you have to. Happy Mother's Day, Happy Father's Day, I suppose, but there's no rules that you have to celebrate the holiday. There's no rules that say you have to celebrate Christmas, so why should you have to celebrate Mother's Day or Father's Day? You don't. You don't have to. Keep that in mind, everyone, okay? Because that's just another way they control you, and they don't have to do that. You don't have to listen to their controls. TF Calm signing off.